So tomorrow is the 3rd anniversary of Julian's desperate time in Belmarsh and the 10th year of his detention, isolation and psychological torture. As John Pilger said, the times we live in are so dangerous and so distorted in public perception that propaganda is no longer an invisible government. It is the government. It rules directly without fear of contradiction, and its principal aim is the conquest of us, our sense of the world, our ability to separate truth from lies. Wikileaks exposed the machinations and strategy of such invisible government, informing and educating the public. The secrets of such governments spilled through the web pages of wikileaks.org more than any other government, the secrets of the US government, the mightiest military power the world has ever seen. A military that brought death and destruction to the civilian population of Hiroshima and Nagasaki without ever facing any consequences, and continued ever since to expand their military capability to the point where they could bring about the destruction of the whole planet with a nuclear arsenal. The US democracy, flawed to the point of hardly being recognized as such, has failed to channel the ingenuity of its people to peaceful works, but filled the pages of its history with the suffering of others, whilst at the same time presenting to the world a Hollywood-style fantasy of exceptionalism, the land of dreams and benevolent power. WikiLeaks publications shatter this dream and the ability to endlessly propagandize, lie, and manipulate domestic and global populations, and controlling their elected leaders to fall in line with the US plans for global domination. WikiLeaks publications expose the strategies on how they plan for war, for example in Ukraine, and how they conduct a war, for example in Iraq and Afghanistan. A diplomatic cable which was sent in 2009 by US Ambassador to Russia William J. Burns stated in part, NATO enlargement, particularly Ukraine, remains an emotional and neuralgic issue for Russia, but strategic policy considerations also underlying strong opposition to NATO membership for Ukraine and Georgia. In Ukraine, these include fears that the issue could potentially split the country in two, leading to violence or even, some claim, civil war, which would force Russia to decide whether to intervene. Additionally, the GOR and experts continue to claim that Ukrainian NATO membership would have a major impact on Russia's defense industry, Russian-Ukrainian family connections, and bilateral relations generally. During his annual review of Russia's foreign policy, January 22-23, Foreign Minister Lavrov stressed that Russia had to view continued eastward expansion of NATO, particularly to Ukraine and Georgia, as a potential military threat. While Russia might believe statements from the West and NATO was not directed against Russia, when one looked at recent military activities in NATO countries, they had to be evaluated not by stated intentions, but by the potential. While Russian opposition to the first round of NATO enlargement in the mid-90s was strong, Russia now feels itself able to respond more forcefully to what it perceives as actions contrary to its national interests. This was an excerpt from a diplomatic cable released by WikiLeaks. And now bring to your mind that the person who wrote this cable knew exactly what he was talking about. He was the US ambassador to Moscow. The same gentleman last year, William J. Burns, became CIA director a whole year before Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. This cable constitutes conclusive proof that the Pentagon and the CIA knew with absolute certainty that Russia's response would be if they threatened to absorb Ukraine into NATO. They knew it and they planned for war. They might as well moved President Putin's hands on the global chessboard. Now the US paints Russia, another empire, as the only responsible party, concealing the fact that they planned this war, they wanted it, and they will make sure it lasts and lasts so they can achieve their military objectives for global domination, not caring about the thousands of dead men, women and children, whilst they enrich their military industries. Chelsea Manning was part of this US military class. She witnessed the horrors of war and in an act of moral courage gave the world this treasure trove of documents from inside the bureaucratic system itself. And so we learned how the US conducts its war through thousands of military reports from the military field, documenting the death of thousands in Iraq and Afghanistan. More often than not, innocent civilians, children, the horrors are endless. We don't just know, due to Wikileaks, we have the proof of it. And that is why those US officials who invest, plan, and conduct the wars hate Julian Assange and have relentlessly and obsessively persecuted him, done everything they can to destroy, isolate, silence, persecute, prosecute, incarcerate, torture, and hound him. Lies and lies were spread about him directly by the CIA, including via Luke Harding at The Guardian, when, for example, he published the lie that Trump's campaign manager, Paul Manafort, visited Julian Assange inside the Ecuadorian embassy. They did that to build a false narrative that WikiLeaks helped Trump win and so alienate from WikiLeaks the thousands of Democratic Party voters who read at the web pages of wikileaks.org that the Democratic Party had abandoned its neutrality and conspired against Bernie Sanders becoming their presidential nominee, and these voters were enraged. The lie was planted to silence them. Since November last year, we know that the Guardian journalists involved in researching this story knew that this visit never happened. They knew it because they had asked the security company UC Global for confirmation of the visit, and UC Global had said they had denied such visit ever taking place. Still, The Guardian published a front-page lie to frame Julian Assange. The US is by no means the only villain in the world. But since we are here in the UK, we belong to this alliance. The US is our villain. And this is why we want to hold them to account. Because when the US coughs, the UK jumps, follows, and amplifies. And in this, the persecution of Julian Assange, the UK has been an active partner of the worst kind. The UK security services collaborated with the CIA in the surveillance of Julian Assange. I will point you to the flat opposite at number 18, where the CIA was holding its operation. That's where they had laser microphones. Who could believe such technology existed? They have popularized modern methods of surveillance. That's where they were. And the UK security services were posters underneath that lamppost. The same vehicle, week in, week out, with its engine running. We know so because we held a vigil here, just where this gentleman is standing there. We held a weekly vigil and we witnessed it. The UK security services collaborated with the CIA in the surveillance of Julian Assange inside the embassy by paying as much as $250,000 per month to David Morales, the owner of UC Global, to spy on Julian Assange, and outside it by employing the Metropolitan Police, MI5, MI6, and other foreign intelligence agencies to survey and assist, including plans to assassinate Julian Assange and shoot at him in the event he tried to leave the embassy. Yahoo News broke the story in September 2021 with their article, Kidnapping, Assassination and a London Shootout, inside the CIA's secret war plans against Wikileaks. 30 former and current US intelligence officials tell how the CIA, enraged by Wikileaks publication Vault 7, was determined to take revenge. UK officials were on board with these plans. The UK political administration collaborated with the US administration in applying political pressure to Ecuador to terminate his asylum. Independent media, Declassified UK, in April last year, revealed how Prime Minister Theresa May was told in March 2018 to butter up Ecuador's president in order to get Assange out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Later in the year, Theresa May's government spent £20,000 to bring Ecuadorian officials and Defence Minister to UK. British Foreign Minister arranged Daily Mail hit piece on WikiLeaks publisher days after his eviction from the embassy. Same minister gave Ecuador's president a plate from Buckingham Palace gift shop to say thank you for handing over Assange. National Security Advisor Richard Moore, now head of MI6, was in Ecuador 2 weeks before Assange was expelled from the embassy. These all are data and facts that come out from Sir Alan Duncan's political diary. He was the minister responsible for orchestrating the expulsion of Julian Assange. And he writes it with arrogance and with a confidence that he will never face the music of his actions. He writes it into a book and publishes it as a diary. The UK judiciary collaborated with the US Department of Justice and the US political administration to deliver Julian Assange first in UK custody, then in a UK jail indefinitely, and then extradite him to the US. May that never happen. May they never succeed. In February 2018, Lady Arbuthnot, Chief Magistrate at Westminster Magistrates Court, decided to uphold a UK arrest warrant against Julian Assange, which was pending in relation to the Swedish case, which had been closed in May 2017. In her closing remarks, she stated the US had not requested his extradition. We now know that this was a lie and that she had herself signed a fresh warrant against him in autumn 2017 on the back of a US diplomatic note requesting his arrest and extradition. Lady Arbuthnot remained the presiding judge in Julian Assange's case, although she delegated to a judge under her guidance, Vanessa Barreza, the day-to-day judicial work. Lady Arbuthnot's family connections with the UK state security sector are well documented by Declassified UK. Both her husband and son have been working, earning their living through public and private national security organizations. There has been no neutrality in this case. We know whose interest she served and for whose interest she lied. Every single judge in the UK made rulings against Julian Assange, with the exception of Barreza, who provided the momentary fig leaf on the 4th of January 2021, when she barred his extradition on humanitarian grounds, which were swept away in October 2021, when the Lord Chief Justice Ian Burnett, a close personal friend of Sir Alan Duncan, who as Foreign Minister arranged Assange's eviction from the Ecuadorian embassy, accepted diplomatic assurances by the US government that Julian Assange will be treated humanely. Who believes this? Who believes this rubbish? Who believes this rubbish? The people who are prepared to shoot at him and kill him, to assassinate him, would treat him fairly. Why are we treated as children? Why aren't we treated as adults who understand how the world works? And here we find ourselves, witnesses on how our democracy, if we can call it like that, has failed to safeguard the values we hold dear. Respect for political asylum? Gone. Human rights protection? Gone. Right to live free of the threat of death and violence? Gone. A refuge in law and justice through courts?
Gone.
Gone. A free press?
Gone.
Gone. Censorship in word and in kind. In this dystopia, where every imaginable violation of those instruments society has developed to move away from barbarity and into a civil accord between those who govern and those who are governed, we stand naked. But our determination to continue defending Julian Assange, his right to live free and in safety, defending his right to continue his worthy work with Wikileaks, for he embodies the universal struggle of every person to better our world. He has been extremely successful in achieving his life's work. He has been the best defender of those humanistic values that have driven humanity forward, raised himself with his ingenuity and determination in a position to make a real difference in the world, and deserves that has our endless support. We follow him today as he's violently dragged down these steps outside his place of refuge, to the court and later to Belmarsh prison. Join us in this journey of support and defense of the publisher of Wikileaks as we demand free Julian Assange!
Free Julian Assange!
Free Julian Assange!